So welcome listeners to another episode of the Wholehearted Podcast. And today I'm excited to have with me a friend I met on LinkedIn. His name is Eric Lim. He's the co-founder of Somnus Sleep Wellness. It's kind of irony for me to say that I'm excited about talking to a person who is an expert on sleep. He is awarded the Social and Health Manpower Development Program Fellowship by the Ministry of Health in 2017. He's a second certified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher in Singapore, conferred by the Mindfulness Center at Brown University School of Public Health. He won the 2017 AWA Young Model Caregiver Merit Award for his dedication to supporting caregivers at Brown Center, as well as his unwavering attention in caring for his father. What a wonderful young gentleman. So Eric, welcome to the Wholehearted Podcast.
Thank you, Coen, for inviting me to be part of this. I'm really very thankful to be able to share my experiences here with everyone.
Fantastic, Eric, and I just cannot wait to get stuck right into this. So we usually ask our guests on the Wholehearted Podcast, what does being wholehearted mean to you?
Wholehearted to me really means being true to myself and also being true to others in a way that we can begin to embrace our fear of being judged, to be able to embrace as well the courage to pursue what I believe in.
Wow, I really love that definition, especially the fear of being judged, right? So maybe you'd like to share with us a little bit more about what are the times in your life when you were being judged?
I would say the first time was really about when I first learned that my dad had a stroke. And I was so afraid of sharing this information with my friends, right? Because I was so scared that people might view me as, hey, Eric will be too busy. He won't be able to hang out with us. And I was not ready to share this piece of information with my friends and also my colleagues at the very start. Yeah, and I was thinking, what will people think of me? Most parents are very much, in a way, working really hard, right, to provide for the family. And here my dad, after working really hard, providing for family, he had a stroke. And there was a part of me that was scared, right, to share that with the rest of the people that I know. Yeah.
Wow. We'll come to that in a while, the story. That's a very, very touching story. So what do you think are obstacles of people today living wholehearted lives?
I think it kind of comes back to the first point I made earlier, right? I think one of the obstacles that people might face is that fear of not being good enough as well, right? Not being able to meet up to one's own expectations and also that of others. And this limits people from really pursuing what they truly believe in and taking action to pursue that.
Well, feeling less of, I think that's a very, very powerful, emotion that hold a lot of people back. And just like to know from you, have you ever felt less of growing up?
Yes, I would say so. I think first was so just thinking back about my two brothers, right? And both of them are amazing individuals in their own regard, having gotten like the MOE scholarship to become a teacher. And I was the only one in the family who did not get a scholarship, right? And a part of me felt like, my parents really had to work really hard to provide me and pay for my university education, which is not a small amount. So I think that has contributed to me feeling a little less off, right, as compared to both my brothers.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And I think you have mentioned this twice in both your answers so far. It's about having that courage to go for what you really want. So have you always known what you really want?
When I was young, probably no. Yeah, I guess as I continue to gain 1 year of wisdom after that, I realized that things begin to connect, right? And I begin to have an interest in wanting to know how people think and why people behave the way they do. And that really led me to pursuing my interest in psychology in university.
So you're a psychology major, you're a psychology graduate.
Yes.
Cool, cool, cool. And when did it click? Where you say that you didn't connect at first, right? So would you say that when you went to university and studying psychology is when you first clicked, or was there other milestones for you?
I would say, yeah, when I begin to read more
Okay.
about what psychology is about, the understanding of the mind, and also human behavior, I begin to be more intrigued, right? Because it makes sense to me, right? At the same time, it also doesn't make sense, right? And
yeah,
it and for the first time, I realized that actually the human mind is so complex.
yeah.
It really can't be captured in a book, right? And it's how the society progresses and change day to day, month to month, year to year, that we continue to invest in unraveling the mysteries of the human mind.
Wow. And I think the technology has really changed it even more, right? It's like we are progressing at such a fast pace, and but however, a lot of our human minds still haven't quite progressed, and a lot of it is still down to fear, right? It's like in ancient days when we see saber-toothed tiger, right? Our ancestors will be, like programmed to kind of like fright, fight, or flight, right? But I think nowadays we have modern days saber-toothed tigers. Even though most of us, I would say that I would dare say most of us listening to this podcast are not battling like saber-toothed tigers on a day-to-day basis, but we still have our modern day saber-toothed tigers, right?
Yes.
So, what were some of the fears that held you back when you were growing up?
Some of these fears that held me back was, I think, the first one in secondary school. And I always look up to my second brother, being a role model. And when he got into this school, which is at that point in time was known as the Chinese High School, so I was really inspired, and I worked really hard in primary school to hopefully get a place in this very wonderful institution itself, right? So I record that I attended his Sec 4 graduation ceremony. And that was the first time, as I walk up the hills at Bukit Timah Road, I was so astounded and amazed by the clock tower, right, which was standing at the top of this hill, which the school was situated on. And that moment made me really wanted to work very hard, right, so that one day I can also earn a place in this school, to really learn from the very best and be with the brightest minds. And so when I actually got in, I was really shocked, right? Because everyone, like my classmates, were all so smart. And I felt like I was not smart enough. I felt like I was probably one of the weakest link in the class itself. And it was a time that I felt like, I was constantly comparing myself to others, right? Comparing myself to my peers, even in other classes as well. And that was a time that I felt like, wow, there's just so many people out there who are far better than me.
Wow, I can really relate to that. Like yourself, I didn't get to that school with the clock tower, but that was you had done very well, really. Actually, I went to a school that's not as good as that one, but also contains some of the brightest minds in Singapore. And when I was there, I was really literally the underdog. I was literally the weakest link. I didn't do so well in my studies, and our teachers often come to class, condemning us, saying that, you are the black sheeps of the school, you are the ones who's going to pull our school ranking down. And for our listeners outside of Singapore, Singapore's education system is extremely competitive, and there's this whole school ranking thing and keeping up with the Joneses that really is like, it is a destroyer of a lot of our confidence. And I was really literally the weak link, and it really, I'll just say it, okay, I'll just say it, sorry for my French, but it really sucks to feel like a weak link. You just feel like your self-esteem is crushed, like you don't belong. And that's really, really very debilitating. So how did you overcome that then?
I would say my teachers were a very important element in supporting me in believing in myself, right? They are always there to encourage me, right? To also put forth this idea that comparison with others too much will just make myself feel more miserable, right? So they advised me to focus on working harder on the weaker subjects, and that really motivated me to dedicate myself to wanting to learn more, right? To embrace it with this sense of curiosity as to how I can begin to let go of this fear, right? Of not being good enough, not being belong
Yes.
in this space itself. And to overcome that self-limiting belief that I had.
Wow. I mean, Eric, our viewers at home or our listeners, on the podcast, you probably cannot see his body language, but Eric may seem very calm and composed, but he is really a force to be reckoned with. His determination, and I have heard this word from you several times, dedication. It seems to me that dedication is something that you really are. You're very devoted and dedicated to your mission, your passion, your purpose, and I'm very deeply moved by that. You have this very down to earth presence, but at the same time, you can really feel the depth of his devotion to his craft.
Thank you, Coen, for the very kind words.
It is. I see that in you, and that inspires me tremendously. So, like to really moving forward a little, you went to study psychology, and I understand in our previous chat that when you were in university studying psychology, you took a module that really changed a big part of your life. Would you care to share more about that?
Yes, that was in my final year in university in 2013. And I was so intrigued by the name of this module. It was called Mindful Psychology.
Interesting.
And it was the first time it was being offered, and I had no idea what it was going to be about. And I decided to sign up for it anyway. And little did I expect that it turned out to be the most life-changing module I ever took in my lifetime.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Yes.
Tell me more. How did it change your life?
So in the last year of my university, that was also the time that my dad fell ill. So I remember receiving a call from my mom saying that my dad fainted at my void deck. And I rushed home, and thankfully he kind of was able to make his way back to our home. And I instinctively I wanted to bring him to see a doctor. So we went to the nearest polyclinic, and that was when the nurses was doing the triage and measured his blood pressure. That was the time that I saw that the readings didn't look quite right. It was, if I could remember correctly, it was about 180 for his blood pressure. And I knew that was not a low number. It was not a normal reading. So that was when the doctor advised for us to go to the hospital immediately at Tan Tock Seng. And I was just waiting outside anxiously at the A&E, waiting for the tests to be done, for the consult by the doctor to be done. And when the doctor came out, he told us that my dad had a stroke. At that moment, I was lost. I did not know what was a stroke, because that word was not in my vocabulary prior to that moment. All along, I was always the one being taken care of. My mom, my dad would dedicate their life to making sure that I always have the best. And when the doctor landed that news on me, I was just shocked, because 1,000 thoughts went through my head. I really did not know what's going to happen, what the future holds, and how am I going to support my dad in that journey itself. And that was when this module of mindful psychology really helped me through this whole process. It helped me to come back to the moment, to realize that I can only choose to be in the present. It helped me to be more in touch with my feelings, to acknowledge the reality. And this module helped me to realize that actually life is so fragile. Life is really full of uncertainty. And the only moment that I can really have is this present moment, which is right now.
Wow. Thanks for sharing.
So it really took me a while to process that. And I'm very thankful to my professor who taught me this practice of mindfulness. Because I would think now, looking back, if I have not learned and been introduced to the concept of mindfulness and the practices, I don't think I would have lasted to today.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And so, was that the first time your dad had a stroke?
Yes, it was the first time that he had a stroke, and it really affected him physically. So his mobility was affected.
Yeah.
And in the months that followed, I had to accompany him for rehab and physiotherapy. So this was on a weekly basis, and because both my brothers are working and I was still a student, I took it upon myself to be his sole caregiver, to accompany him for all these medical visits and therapy sessions so that he can regain the strength to walk on his own again. But sadly, that did not happen. He subsequently suffered 2 other strokes in the span of the 2 years. And that was when the tough got even tougher, because he eventually got diagnosed with vascular dementia. And I would say that that was probably the next pivotal turning point for me in my life. I had to grapple with losing him bit by bit, because he was no longer mentally himself, right, as vascular dementia began to take a toll on his mental capacity. So even though I'm seeing him day to day, helping him to shower, pushing him on his wheelchair, on the commode actually, from his room all the way to the toilet, right, to help him to shower and to dry him and push him back onto his bed and to help him to wear his clothes and all that stuff. This was a daily affair. It was something that I had to do day after day, and it was really not easy. There were moments that I felt like I wanted to give up. There were moments where I felt like I had this question of, why is it me? Why is it my dad? And now on reflection, I feel a lot of strength coming from that whole experience of taking care of my dad. So it was, why was it me back then? But now as I reflect, I'm glad it's me.
Wow. I know you have done some previous media interviews, and there was an article that wrote that even before that, you didn't even know what's your dad's favorite food and what he loves to do. So you were never close to your dad?
Yes, so I was never very much close to my dad. My dad was closer to my brothers. And I think I was a lot closer to my mom. Yeah, and I would say that through this whole period of taking care of him, it really brought us closer. It made me treasure the time that we have together. And I'm really thankful that I took it on, right, to spend this time with him, to really learn more about the times that I've missed. When I was very much active in school, right? I had like, not just, I remember in JC I was doing like outdoor activities. So I was always very busy, organizing events for the student population, even back in secondary school. And when I come back home, it was really late at night, so I don't really have much conversations with my dad, and I really didn't really know what was his favorite food, what he liked, and it was only when he felt ill that really brought us much closer together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. As I was listening to you, I was also like holding back a tear because my dad also had a stroke, and before that, he is a very strong man. He's very hardworking person, always punching above his weight. He only had an O-level certificate, but he actually worked so hard in an MNC. They reached a regional sales leadership position, and he wasn't a sole breadwinner. My mom was working too, but I think my dad was the reason why I have an upper middle class background, upbringing. I never worried about not having food or not having clothes. And my dad is a very active person as well, and he play a lot of sports, soccer, badminton. He taught me how to play badminton. He taught me how to play table tennis. He was a table tennis coach at the CC on a regular basis. He was coaching the local CC team, and until one day after table tennis, he came home and collapsed with a stroke. And I also remember that night in the hospital when they said that they had to operate on him, but there's 25% chance of mortality, so it's a 1 in 4 chance of dying. But if we didn't operate on him, right, he would have been paralyzed. Half his body would be paralyzed for the rest of his life. And I remember in that cold hospital room, I made a call that to operate. It was a big call for me because if he didn't pull through, he wouldn't be here with me right now. But I just somehow had this feeling that my dad is a fighter. He's always been a fighter, and I know that he will pull through. And I'm so glad that he's still here with me. But I don't know if I will ever have that depth of resolve, of courage, of love that you have for your dad. So I'm really full of admiration for you as you're sharing your story. When I first heard your story, I know I needed to get you on this podcast. And it's just so transformational, right? It's like when you step into that role of a caregiver at such a young age.
It was clearly something that I did not plan for, and it was really unexpected for me. At age 24, I had many dreams of traveling, dreams of working in the corporate sector, and many of these dreams, I realized that I have a choice. I have a choice to put them on hold because I knew that I only have one dad. And if I make a choice not to care for him, it was certainly something that I would definitely regret. So I knew deep in my heart that I wanted to do the right thing. Money can be made later, but time lost cannot be turned back.
Wow. That hit me real hard, man. That's a beautiful one. Wow. Well said. I mean, I also read in the article that, your social life took a hit. Obviously, when your friends are out, partying, having meals, enjoying themselves, and you couldn't be with them because you have to be there for your dad. And it may come to a time when, friends will just, like you said earlier on, you're afraid of being judged, right? It's like when you come to a time where your friend just, like, don't even ask you out because they know, Eric is busy. And so could you describe, do you have any emotions around that, like lost social opportunities?
I think in the initial phase when I was very afraid to share that, my dad had a stroke and also subsequently vascular dementia, I find that I was I was depriving myself of the social support that I could have. But when I allowed myself to be more courageous in embracing this vulnerability that I had in terms of, my dad having a stroke and being ill, I was surprised how much my friends understood me.
Yeah.
And I recalled, as you were saying about how, my friends will ask me out, right? And also, I feel I'm always giving them that same response, sorry, I can't make it. So I remember there was this time that my friends messaged me and they said, hey, Eric, don't worry, we'll come to you. And that really touched my heart because they came to the coffee shop near where I stayed with my parents. And for that 2 hours, I really had a good time. I felt like I could share with them some of my struggles. And they were just there listening and really providing me that moral support to cheer me on, to let me know that I'm not alone. And that was the moment that I noticed that I can embrace this vulnerability.
Wow.
Instead of letting that be a limiting factor.
I know this is a question I want to ask. It's deep. But can you tell me a little bit more about how was your dad like before he fell ill? And of course, after he fell ill, right? I mean, a lot of the capacity he lost. But how was he like as a person before that?
He's a man of little words. Very much reserved, but very hardworking. He is someone that puts his family first. And I'm so thankful that I have always been a recipient, right, of his dedication, his hard work, and his beliefs and values, right, to always do good in the community. And I think that's something that really stayed with me. And perhaps, on this day that we're recording this right now, I'd like to pay a tribute to him. And in fact, today is his birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really want to thank him for everything that he has given me. Even though, as his dementia condition took a toll on him, he became less able to speak. His actions taught me more than the words they could say.
Thank you. And I can see it in you that you are a tribute. You're taken on that mantle of letting your work do the talking rather than your words. And that quiet conviction and determination and resilience that you have is very inspiring.
Thank you.
And of course you got married and you have a child now, or
Yes.
share with me more.
So this was 2020 and
during the pandemic.
yes. So I have a baby during the COVID pandemic. And every time when I share this, people will joke, oh, he's a COVID baby. So what's his name, right? People ask him, and I will just very excitedly share, his name is Erickson. Eric's son. And he's born on Valentine's Day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that would be probably the next life-changing moment for me, right? To step into the shoes of being a dad myself. So having watched how and observed how my dad has raised us in his own quiet ways, I realized I want to be a similar role model for my son.
I can feel it. Goosebumps. Wow. And I'm sure your son is very lucky to have you, because you are such a gentle soul, You are such a giving heart, extremely generous. I'm sure your son will get the best upbringing and the best role model that he can have.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm learning every day from him.
Yeah.
And there's this thing about our kids teach us so much. And just on reflection, just this 4 years, I think I learned a lot from just being a dad and also being a husband. And it has been such an amazing journey of self-discovery and practicing what I've learned in my mindfulness journey. To show up, to be present, to be really there.
Beautiful. I want to touch a little bit about the mindfulness journey, obviously. I think mindfulness is something that many people talk about, and that there's just so much going on in social media, and everyone's talking about it. Right? It's become almost commoditized. What is one thing that people often get wrong about mindfulness?
So one thing that I get asked a lot, when I share that I teach mindfulness, is that, hey Eric, do you ever get angry?
No, never.
You should be very mindful all the time, so you will never get angry, right? And I'll say, no, I'm human just like you. I have my fair share of emotions, and that includes anger. So being mindful doesn't mean that I'll never get angry, but it does mean that I become more aware of the moment that anger arises for me, be it in terms of that racing heartbeat, that tension in my shoulders, or perhaps just that frowning on my face, right, to make a point. And this realization, this awareness helps me to come back to this mindful pause, to give myself this headspace that I can choose how I can respond to this moment. I can choose not to say something that I might regret. And it is an ongoing journey. There'll be moments that I may have failed, but I will realize it. And I think that has really helped me in terms of my relationship with my son as well. Right? There are some moments that I get really mad. Like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you jumping on the sofa? And I will yell at him. But this mindfulness practice taught me that, yes, I'm also just being human. I'm just being a dad, trying to be protective of my son so that he doesn't get into danger or hurt himself. So in these few years, I realized that I can muster the courage to tell him, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you.
Wow.
I was really worried for you. Therefore, I yelled at you so that you can calm down. So initially, it was very tough for me to say that, because I feel like, he would judge me. He would see me as something less of being a father. But when I allowed myself to do that, I think that really brought us closer. He began to really trust me a lot.
Wow, the word trust is so powerful here. Yeah, we often use the word trust. We throw the word around so much, right? But we don't understand the true meaning of trust. The true meaning of trust is a sense of, I am loved, I am safe, and I belong here.
Yes.
And that's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. Just want to take a moment for that, just to let that sink in. That's so beautiful. And so now, Eric, I know that you are doing something really remarkable right now, and this new chapter of your life, right? You left your job, and you co-founded a business around sleep. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'm very excited because sleep has something that is very close to my heart. And the first experience of undergoing sleepless nights was really the time that I was taking care of my dad. So because of my dad's vascular dementia condition that made him very much disoriented to day and night, and he'll get really confused as to is it daytime, is it nighttime, and he'll keep shouting for my name. He goes, Eric, 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 bring me down. So he goes for this dementia daycare, and I remember a time where he got so confused over the timing that he at 12 midnight he wanted me to bring him down to wait for this ride. It was to bring him to the dementia daycare itself, and that really kind of started my experience of sleepless night, right? Because I had that fragmented sleep, and I realized when I'm sleep deprived, it really impaired my ability to be present. And through these years, teaching mindfulness and being in a community space, I come to interact with so many people who are feeling stressed out. At the same time, they're also experiencing poor sleep quality. So I knew deep in my heart that I wanted to change that. I wanted to give people hope that we can also get satisfying sleep while managing our life challenges. So that was what inspired me to start Somnus Sleep Wellness together with my co-founder, Dr. Julian Lim.
Wow. Tell us more about Somnus Sleep Wellness and what is this intervention about?
So my dream is really to empower people with the knowledge of sleep health, right? So that people can make informed decisions to live a life that they can thrive. Instead of perhaps accepting that this is my current state of life and there's nothing I can do about it. So I feel very inspired to raise the awareness of the importance of making sleep a priority, to see sleep as something that is no less important than our diet, our exercise, the way that we manage our stress in our lives. And it forms such an important foundation to what it means to live a happier, healthier life.
Fair enough, and it's very true. I think very often people talk about diets and people go on all kinds of diets, right? It's like, intermittent fasting, keto diet, and people go sign up for gym. I think a lot of this is because there's an element of vanity to it, right? It's like, I want to look good, I want to look fit, but I think we underestimate sleep, we underrate sleep. We just think, even if I wake up a bit, I do have enough beauty rest, I can just put on makeup, and kind of cover it over, right? And we gotten very good at masking our lack of sleep, and we are just in such sleep deficit. As I'm saying this, I'm feeling extremely conscious and extremely guilty. I'm actually just sort of like saying sorry to my own body right now that I've been stressing it beyond the zone of tolerance. And I also think that hustle culture is real, right? It's like there's this whole movement around, sleep is overrated, and we should push beyond, and very often I think it all goes hand in hand with mindfulness as well. If we live our waking hours mindlessly, not mindfully, we waste our time, we waste our, instead of when we should be doing more, for example, reading a book or listening to a podcast, we find ourselves mindlessly scrolling on social media. Not that social media is not a good thing. There are some good things you can learn from social media, but we sometimes find ourselves like mindlessly scrolling. And then when it comes to before bedtime, we start to have this sense of, guilt, sense of self-judgment, like, where did the day go? There are so much things I should be doing that I haven't done, and therefore we penalize and we are very punitive towards ourselves. We punish ourselves for not having done the things we said we were going to do, and what happens is that we cram all that in the last 2 hours before we go to bed, and sometimes we even push beyond bedtime, like we sleep way too late, and but that also affects our quality of sleep, right? Because before you go to bed, imagine you are writing a report, you are replying emails, and you are crafting LinkedIn social media content or whatever, right? Guilty as charged. So it's very hard for us to kind of like have kind of a wind down routine and kind of really like go into a deep sleep. So what is your advice for that?
I think the first thing is really about making attention to identify what's this identity that we want to have. How do we really want to live our lives? Do we want to live our life in a way that when we wake up in the morning, we are only about 50% recharged? Or do we want to make a choice in prioritizing our sleep health in a way that sets us on a path towards happiness, towards better health, and even better relationships with our loved ones? So I think one way is perhaps having a wind down routine that is helpful for each of ourselves. And how this might look like might include perhaps dimming down the lights nearing to bedtime.
I know you're quite hardcore on this, right? You sort of like rigged your home. Yeah, you have this like smart home thing, right, where the lights start to dim at a certain time, and the television just switches off at 10 p.m.
Yes, correct.
Well, you're quite hardcore. Tell us more about that routine. Tell us more about your hardcore routine.
Yeah, so I this is something really personal. I used to find that, you know, how nowadays it's so easy to get caught up with the entertainments in our life, right? Be it, you know, the Netflix, Disney Plus, YouTube even, and social media. And that's what often contributes to like bedtime procrastination. So one way I try to mitigate that is to set a routine for the smart lights that I have in my house, so that at about 9 o'clock it will start switching out from white light to warm light.
Oh.
And from the time from 9 to 10 o'clock, it will slowly dim in terms of its brightness and gets darker and darker as a signal to tell us as a whole family, right, that it's time to wind down. And I think that has been really helpful for my son as well, where, you know, after, you know, coming back from school, he does get about 30 to 40 minutes of time that he can be entertained. And I find that having the devices to switch off to some degree helps him to realize there's an end point. It's time to wind down. It's time to read his bedtime stories.
Yes, it's I think something related to the circadian rhythm, right? It's like how, for example, when we travel to some countries when there's like long days, maybe during summer, or like we have short days during winter. It's like we have this sort of, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a scientist, maybe you're the expert here, but I'm just throwing whatever I think I know. Things like you know, the light, right, when the sun goes down, it's like kind of a signal to our brains, to our
Yes.
minds, that it's time to sleep.
Correct.
Right, and so therefore we have things like jet lag as well, because when our whole bio clock gets out of whack, right? So I think they're so clever for you to really hack the lights to in such a way that it starts to tune down, and it really simulates like the sun going down, and it's a signal to you that, oh, it's time to wind down.
I think in our modern society, because we have the privilege of having lights, you know,
yeah.
in the absence of the sun, you know, when the sun sets, I think that kind of brings with it this culture of continuing to work, right, into the night. And this is something that was probably more prevalent, right, during the pandemic itself, where work and home time, right, is kind of blurred.
Yeah.
Right, and I think it's so important to be able to segregate that, right, to inform ourselves that, hey, we can do something, right, in the right direction that protects our rest time.
I love it. So Somnus Wellness, is it just education, or is it some, because you know when it comes to sleeping, people have all kinds of, you know, gadgets, right? It's like whether is it some gadget that you use, or is it you know, a magnetic pillow that you sleep on, or negative ion pillow, or what have you. So what is Somnus Wellness? Is it a product based, or is it service based, or is it education based, or is it a whole package?
For now, it's really more education and service based,
Okay.
right? So really looking into the spectrum of sleep wellness from the preventive end to the intervention spectrum of it. And on the preventive side, I think this is where I'm very excited to share that we have just launched this brief sleep health screening in partnership with AIA Vitality Singapore. Yeah, because we really wanted to give people a snapshot of their current sleep health. And that's where we, in this 20-minute screening, will help people to gain more awareness of whether are they at risk of sleeping disorders or even sleep apnea or even insomnia, right? And begin to take action to resolve that.
But if I were to just ask for one tip, right? What is one tip that we can apply straight away to improve the quality of our sleep?
I think one tip would be to set ourselves this time to wind down. And this is something that we can schedule into our calendar, right? Just as we would schedule a meeting, right? We can schedule a winding down time so that we begin to signal to our brain to say that, hey, it's time to let go of the work.
Yep.
It's time to come back to prioritizing ourselves, our well-being, and also spending quality time, not just with ourselves and also with our family members. Nice. So I think that's so when we begin to schedule this winding down time, I think it would be really helpful for us to welcome sleep in a kinder way.
Oh, I love it. Welcome sleep in a kinder way. I love it. What a beautiful soundbite. And it's about helping us to also welcome ourselves, right? And reward ourselves with the sleep. Wow, cool. Eric, it's like so much. You're giving us so much value today. I kind of look at it. The thing that came to my mind was like, I'm not a pilot, but I do know that pilots have takeoff checklists, startup checklists, taxiway checklists, and also shutdown checklists. So, for example, when they land a plane, after they land the plane, right, they park the plane and then they need to shut down all the engines, shut down everything, and there's a shutdown checklist as well. And I kind of think of, creating shutdown checklists for myself as well, right? Maybe asking myself questions, also a bit of reflection questions like, what am I grateful for today? What have I learned today? In what ways have I grown or become better today? And with that, right, I can allow myself to then welcome sleep with kindness without feeling guilty. And I think that's so powerful as well, because when we carry regrets with us to our sleep, right, it actually affects the way we show up the next day.
I agree totally with you, Coen. I think that's a really good tip as well, to bring gratitude into our current moment as we begin to wind down. And oftentimes, as I work with clients, many of times when they struggle with sleep, it's often the mind being too active.
Oh.
Getting very caught up with the things that have yet to be done, the things that are going to happen tomorrow. And
you talking about me? I'm so conscious right now. Of course, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so I think that when we begin to shift our attention to taking in the good, to embracing the moments that have gone well in the day, instead of getting caught up with things that have not gone well, that really helped us to welcome sleep a lot better.
Very nice, cool. Okay, as we're coming to the end of this, we talk about landing the plane, right? So we're just going to land the plane on this episode. So coming to the end of this podcast, we normally ask our clients. I mean, our guests. Some we talk about your clients, right? So our guests some quick fire questions to finish. So are you ready?
Okay, sure.
As ready as you can be. You're always mindful and ready, right? So, quick fire question number 1. What's the most powerful question you have ever been asked before?
I'm so lost. I understand why it's called quick fire question. What's the question again? Sorry.
What's the most powerful question you have ever been asked before?
Have I experienced negativity before?
Oh, very interesting question. Yeah, I can understand that. It's like that really helps you to really dig deeper. Great. Who is a mentor or supporter who you would say has made the biggest difference in your life?
I would like to say my professor in university.
And his name is?
Dr. Gregor Langer.
Dr. Gregor Langer. Do check him out. He's the one who taught you mindful psychology.
Yes, that's right.
That's awesome. Okay, final question. What is one of the most courageous things you have ever done in your life that's made all the difference? I think you have answered this before, but we'll just throw it to you again.
I'd like to say skydiving.
Oh, you did skydiving?
Yes.
Wow, nice.
I think that was a moment to confront my inner fear
Mm-hmm.
of letting go.
Wow.
So I pushed myself to leap out of a plane.
Wow. Wow.
And it was a really awakening moment for me to realize that I can really choose to do what I want when I let go of my fear.
That's so powerful, and then it comes a full circle for our podcast, where we started with the podcast talking about fear of judgment. We talk about how you have engendered trust for your son Erickson, and how you lean into your friends and being vulnerable to them, and it just ties up the podcast in such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ribbon. So once again, thank you, Eric, for coming on to the Wholehearted podcast and inspiring us with your stories. I'm just so inspired right now listening to you. And where can our listeners find out more about you and your business if they would like to contact you?
They can find me on my LinkedIn, which is Eric Lim CJ.
Okay, we'll post the links down in the show notes. And besides that, do you have a company website?
Yes, you can visit our website at www.somnus, which is SOMNUS, wellness, WELLNESS.com.
Great. And so this screening, is it only available in Singapore, or can our listeners do it from abroad?
For now, it's only in Singapore because it's face to face.
Ah,
But eventually we might make it online.
Great.
and
But
make
seriously,
it
why
more
wouldn't you
accessible.
want to meet Eric face to face, right? It's like, come down to Singapore and meet the man himself, right? So once again, thank you, Eric, for being on the Wholehearted podcast.
Thank you, Coen. Appreciate this opportunity to share.
I'm very
you.
grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.